The views and opinions expressed by the following program are those of the host, guests, and callers and are not necessarily those of this station or Webster Rock Hill Ministries, its management, or other hosts or underwriting sponsors. Programs presented by KWRH-LP are for educational and entertainment purposes only.
Good morning, St. Louis. This is Webster Groves in tune at KWRH-LP 92.9 FM. This is Arnold Stricker
and I'm Ellie, but Arnold, it's not just Webster Groves.
And I said St. Louis.
Okay. You know it's the world.
Oh, that's right.
We are like big.
That's correct, because on iTunes or on SoundCloud, you can hear previous shows of In Tune.
That's right. And didn't we just get a big national shout out?
We got a national shout out by our guest last week, Rodney J. Reynolds, who's he's the head of the American Legacy Network. He sent out an email blast about the network, and it said, just to let you know, we were interviewed on the air by a St. Louis radio station, KWRH-LP 92.9 FM, that took the time to find out and talk about American Legacy Network.
Yeah, baby.
Boy, and the hits have been hitting.
Yeah. See, that's why I say we are no longer just 63119.
Okay, so I'll say, hello, international world.
There you go. We are big.
We are big.
Coming from the little radio station that could.
The little radio station that is chugging along now.
Chugging along. Yes, we are.
Woo-hoo.
I tell you. And you know, I just want to say something. I was reading our wonderful Webster Kirkwood Times this morning, and cancer survivors Chad Kavanaugh and Matt Long cycling close to benefit pedal the cause. We just want to just give them our support and just say that we're behind you guys. They have spent 7 days pushing their bodies to the limit in one of the world's toughest cycling courses, and they did it while raising thousands of dollars for a cause close to our heart. And you know, for me, having lost my husband to cancer, anytime anyone is doing anything to support cancer research, cancer, whatever we're talking about with this dreaded virus disease that's taking over our country, you know, I'm definitely for it. So go, guys. Go, guys. Oh, and I do want to do a shameless plug. Is that okay?
Plug away shamelessly.
Okay, this is like so shameless. You're going to be like, Ellie, I can't believe you do this. But tomorrow night, Families United, which comes on our air every week, they are having their community benefit mega fest for youth and families at the Renaissance Marriott Hotel up by the airport. And yours truly, I don't know why they did this, but yours truly is going to be one of the honorees.
Bum, 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 bum.
That's right. To me tomorrow night, I got to get dressed up, put on my duds, and go sit and eat some hotel chicken.
Maybe it's airline chicken. That's supposed to be pretty decent.
Is that?
It's kind of a way.
I want smart chicken.
Smart chicken,
like I get when I go to Lucky's.
Free range chicken.
Shameless plug. Lucky's Market.
Free range chicken.
Yeah. You know, they're smart, but they couldn't be too smart because they got caught.
That's
they ended up on the platter, so they can't be that smart, can they?
That's true.
And you know, we got Webster High getting ready to start soon. Webster Grove School System will be starting very soon.
Right. They're going to be starting very shortly, and everybody needs to watch out, as I heard this morning, as people drive, because we have new drivers. We have kids going back to school. We'll have the big yellow buses traveling around through our community again, so an important thing. You were speaking of being smart. We want our listeners to be smart when they go to the polls on Tuesday.
You better believe it. We have got some stuff coming up on Tuesday, and people need to be aware.
We need to be aware, and that's one reason we have Nancy Miller, who is with us in studio. She's co-president of the League of Women Voters of Metro St. Louis. Welcome, Nancy.
Well, thank you. Good morning.
We're glad to have you here this morning. And tell us a little bit about the League and what the function of the League of Women Voters is.
Okay. Well, let's see. We, of course, have been around for quite a while. Next year's our 100-year anniversary. Of course, not me personally, but the ladies who worked very, 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 very hard to get the vote, first of all, for women. And after the vote was achieved, they decided that they probably should also help women learn about the legal processes, what it takes to get a bill passed, all of the things involved in getting more rights for women. And we're still doing that today. We're still working to do two things: educate voters, provide voter services through registering voters, candidate forums, Speakers Bureau, and we're also advocating for issues which are very important to women and to children.
Which is very much what our show is, Ellie, In Tunes, a 2-hour weekly broadcast, focusing on issues and reflecting on issues that impact and connect our community in the greater St. Louis area. And we talk about arts, crime, education, employment, voting, faith, finance, food, history, housing, humor, and justice.
And, over these next few weeks, well, we know Tuesday is a very important day. There's so many issues. There's so many candidates that are on the ballot. We've had a chance to talk to several of them. We had Wesley Bell on. We had Ms. McCulloch on. We had Pat Dolan on. We've had people on. But after Tuesday, once we see who kind of...
Once the dust settles.
That's a good way of putting it. I was going to say who it whittles down to. We're going to start having those people on the air so that our listeners can hear exactly what these folks think. So if any of our people in our audience would like to send us a question that we would ask each and every candidate, they can do so by getting in touch with us through our text line, which is 314-736-4510. And that will be one of the questions that we add to our list as we're interviewing those candidates.
And maybe they have a text question for Nancy as she's in studio here. And Nancy, the league's done a lot of different things, as you described, over the years, and the forums and educating and helping people become educated voters. We may have some people out there listening who are new voters, who maybe have never voted or who have voted infrequently, unfortunately. Sometimes situations dictate that. When someone goes to the polls and votes on Tuesday, what should they have available to, when they walk in the door, what's going to happen?
Well, the first thing that they'll need to do is show some form of identification. And it sounds strange, and yet sometimes the polling places vary. Some will allow you to show them the cards that are mailed out by the various county offices. If that matches what they have on record and you sign and the signatures match, you're good to go. The 4 pieces of identification that are the best, they're tier number 1 for the state, are, of course, a driver's license. It has a picture on it. A non-driver's pictured state identification card, a military ID, which also has a picture on it, or a passport. Those are the best. If you don't have those, you need something else to show you are who you are and you live where you're voting, like an electric bill or a gas bill, something along that line. When you move away from the picture IDs, then you should know that you're going to have to sign a statement saying that you are who you are and you don't have these picture IDs with you. And then you're going to be allowed to vote, and that's going to be counted just the same as if you had the first tier. So you shouldn't worry too much. If you have voted before, if your signature's on file, you're going to be allowed to vote.
And in this particular election, because it's a primary election, you will be asked what ballot you would like, correct?
That's correct. For this one, for our primaries in Missouri, you do have to declare a party to get the right ballot, because each ballot only has one party on it. Now, they don't keep record. They don't put next to your name a D or an R or a G. They don't do that, but they have to know which ballot to hand you. So that's the only time it's asked.
And there are, on the ballots, there will be individuals' names running for a variety of offices, but there are also some county issues on the ballot. And so the county issues will be on everybody's ballot, but the only thing that's going to change will be the names, whether you're asked for a Democratic ballot, a Republican ballot, Libertarian ballot, a Green Party ballot, or Constitutional Party ballot, right? So,
correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm unable to, because of age or disability or some kind of thing, I'm unable to get inside the building where I'm going to cast my vote, what can I do?
Well, there are several options. One is if you are, let's say someone has driven you to the polls, they can go inside and request that one of the supervisors come out. By state statutes, that's required. They have to do that if they're asked to do that. They can come to the car, bring a ballot out to you. If you have a wheelchair or something and someone can take you inside, then you can vote on your own. something they're really pushing in St. Louis County is the permanent disability list. Of course, it's too late for this election now, but you could still sign up for that after this election and be ready for November. And if that requires 2 steps. It doesn't require having it notarized, which is really nice. So that might be an option for those folks too.
The other thing I guess they could do is get an absentee ballot.
Yes.
But that would have to be done, 30 days at least prior to the election, something like that?
Well, actually, no, the last day to apply for absentee was August 1st.
Wow.
But they have to be received by the end of the voting on Tuesday. So,
okay.
Yeah. They could have, but it's a little late today.
Okay. Just for kind of helping out for the future, for the November elections, this is good information to have.
Oh, well, let me just add, in-person absentee is still available. They can still vote today, tomorrow, and Monday in-person absentee at the 3 government centers, up at the Old Northwest Plaza, south, down at the South County, well, it's a southern St. Louis County government office building, and that's down by Sam's in South County.
Okay.
And then out west, there's one off of Clarkson, so there are 3 places where they can vote absentee today, tomorrow, and Monday.
Excellent, excellent. Now, on the ballot, I opened the paper up here, our local Webster Kirkwood Times, and, you look at how many people are running for U.S. Senate. On the Republican side, I'm just going 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. Democrat 2, 4, 6, 8. It's on and on. There's another one. Let's see. Those I think are the races that have the most people involved.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to go from national races all the way down to state races, some representatives, some Senate races, depending upon what district you're in. So it's important that you find that out. Also, the statewide propositions. And these, I know, sometimes can get very confusing.
Yes, they can.
Because, folks, if you haven't read the ballot language, you need to read the ballot language. But we're going to get into this a little bit, and we're going to start with statewide Proposition A, and this is what the ballot says. It says, "Do the people of the state of Missouri want to adopt Senate Bill 19 in parentheses right to work?" as passed by the General Assembly in 2017, which prohibits as a condition of employment the forced membership in a labor organization, in parentheses union, or forced payments of dues in full or pro rata, in parentheses fair share, make any activity which violates employees' rights illegal and ineffective, allow legal remedies for anyone injured as a result of another person violating or threatening to violate employees' rights, and which shall not apply to union agreements entered into before the effective date of Senate Bill 19. State and local government entities expect no costs or savings. Now, if you have not read the ballot language and you've not investigated what's going on, it's going to take you a long time unless you just decide to vote one way or the other.
True. True.
So what this, I know that the league has put out a little bit of information, and what they've said, and you, since you're a co-president of that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, says that a yes vote will adopt Senate Bill 19, the right to work, passed by the General Assembly in 2017. If adopted, Senate Bill 19 will amend Missouri law to prohibit as a condition of employment forced membership in a labor union, labor organization, or forced payments of dues or fees in full or pro rata to a union. Senate Bill 19 will also make any activity which violates employees' rights provided by the bill illegal and ineffective, and allow legal remedies for anyone injured as a result of another person violating or threatening to violate those employees' rights. Senate Bill 19 will not apply to union agreements entered into before the effective date of Senate Bill 19 unless those agreements are amended or renewed after the effective date of Senate Bill 19. And a no vote rejects that. And Senate Bill 19 does not become law. So what is all this extra verbiage in there? I can hear some people and their eyes are glazing over, their ears are like, I can't listen to this anymore. This is so confusing. Why do they write language like this? But it's written to be very, very specific. So can you illuminate some of these things for us?
Well, let's go back a little bit. There's quite a history of this in our state. From 1935 to 1947, the National Labor Relations Act was in force, and that was to help unions and workers work together. It was to protect workers. It was to, these came out of the days when they were poor tactics were being used, I'll say that, by employers. In 1947, the Taft-Hartley Act was passed. That act prohibited unions from requiring, I shouldn't say it that way. It allowed states to do what Missouri is trying to do right now, to reduce the force of unions. Let me turn the page here on my document. In 1967, there was a Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court ruled that a state could not they could not make it illegal for a union to collect the fees for bargaining, the pro rata fees, unless they had a vote of the people. So they cannot require union dues already. They haven't been able to since 1967. No one can be forced to join a union. That's the law right now. The law now states that they can be required to pay for the bargaining cost. So when you vote yes on this, you're saying, yes, they shouldn't even be able to require them to pay a bargaining fee when they're bargaining for their own pay. If you vote no, you're saying it needs to be the way it is, which means the unions can require a fee for the bargaining.
So the language in this particular ballot that says make any activity which violates employees' rights illegal and ineffective, what does that mean?
Gibberish. This is written after a standard right-to-work bill that's been passed around the country.
Okay.
And it's like a catch-all for all the different states that have tried this. Some have gotten it, 14 have gotten it, some have failed. And it's just kind of to say this is going to take away any extra rights that unions have for their workers. And we're going to that's what's going to happen. So to say no, to say
no on this is to actually allow the what you're saying, allow the current laws to just really be what they are, which is nobody is required to join a union, but they are required to pay union fees and dues.
Not dues. They're just required to pay a fee for the union negotiating for their wages. Somebody told me an example to use. It's like you're in a neighborhood you're in a development and everybody pays their fees in, everybody gets the same services, and somebody decides they shouldn't have to pay those fees because, they shouldn't because they live there, but they don't want to pay them. So they get to have their driveway shoveled, they get to have their lawn mowed, and they don't pay anything for it.
Okay, interesting.
I thought that was an interesting analogy.
All right, let's go to St. Louis County Charter Amendments. And in reading these, there's Proposition 2, Proposition 3, and Proposition 4. I have no clue what happened to Proposition 1.
Well, Proposition 4 has been ruled out. The judge ruled out last Friday, so there's just 2 left.
That'll be on the ballot, but you won't be able to vote for it. Even if you vote for it, it's not going to count.
Right.
So we've got Prop 2, and it seems like these came out of, this is my opinion here, and just reading these, they came out of a little disagreement between the county executive and the county council. So what we've got is Proposition 2, shall the St. Louis County Charter be amended as proposed by Ordinance Number 27,057, enacted on the 29th day of May 2018. Said charter, as so amended, would provide that the council may appoint an attorney licensed to practice law in Missouri to its executive staff and enter into a contract with outside private counsel who shall be an attorney licensed to practice law in Missouri. In summary of that from the league is this county charter amendment would allow the county council to hire its own staff attorney and contract with outside private lawyers instead of relying on lawyers in the county counselor's office, which is overseen by the executive branch. If a judge rules in favor of a court challenge of this amendment, voters would be instructed at the polls to disregard the proposition, and any votes on the measure wouldn't be counted. That's not happened. So is this about a little infighting between County Executive Stenger and the council?
Well, I guess you could put it that way. The 2 that are left on the ballot, well, all 3 of them originally, came from the county council. They had attempted to pass all of these within the council. Each of them was vetoed by the county executive, and they believed that the only way they can make any changes is to take it to the citizens they represent. So these were put on the ballot by the council. Some say that by voting yes, you're voting for what the council wants, and if you say no, you're voting for what County Executive Stenger wants.
Okay, that's an interesting analogy there. And if you have not tuned into county politics or what's going on in county politics, it's a very interesting time right now. The Proposition 3, shall the St. Louis County Charter be amended as proposed by ordinance number 27,058, enacted on the 29th day of May 2018. Now, folks, hang on to your seats, hang on to your ears, hang on to the station. Said charter as so amended would provide the term employment as used in the county charter, section 2.170, shall be strictly interpreted as prescribed in state law, specifically 8 CSR 10-4.150, as that said regulation existed on April 12, 2018. Now, when I read that, I was like, my head was spinning. My eyes were rolling back into my head, and I was thinking, who has that information available to them when they walk into vote?
Probably no one.
Probably no one. That's why we're talking about this stuff, folks. So can you illuminate for us a little bit, Nancy, about what those things are and what this particular measure means?
Right. This measure deals with employees of a government body and whether or not they are allowed to have employment from another government body. Someone works for St. Louis County. Are they allowed to go over to St. Charles County and get a part-time job with them? The state statute says within certain descriptors they are allowed to do that if it's a not the same government body, and if there's no conflict of interest at all. The state statute allows for that. The county councils does not. And so the council members would like the county statute changed so that their statute matches the state law in this particular issue, and that they would be allowed to have employment part-time, non-conflicting, somewhere else in their field of work and not be removed from the council from it. And then, of course, there's a backstory for all that.
And can you illuminate the backstory for us?
Well, the backstory is public. There's nothing secret about it. One of the council members, who is a lawyer, has had a couple of contracts to work short-term for school districts outstate to give them legal advice on issues. And Executive Stenger feels that this is a violation of the county statute, and he would like this person removed from the council.
There it is, folks. It goes back to a little infighting and political posturing that happens on that even happens in church boards.
It happens especially. We're going to argue.
Happens in any organization.
That's right, in any organization. I mean, come on, we can't even agree on how we're going to handle God's business. So the people business, is way out of line, okay?
Well, we want people to be informed about this. And in the paper, there's information. But if people want some more information about the League of Women Voters, where should they go?
Well, they can go to our website. There's lots and lots there. That's www.lwvstl.org. They can go to our Facebook, which is at LWVSTL. And we have a Twitter account. Same thing, League of Women Voters, Metro St. Louis. They can always call us on the old-fashioned phone, and I will get that number up. That's a 961-6869. You've got it.
I've got it right here in front of me.
Wow, that's great. Yes.
Well, Nancy, we really appreciate you coming in today and helping clarify a couple things and helping people understand what they need when they walk in to be able to vote, what they need if they have some issues being able to vote because of physical problems, and then illuminating what these amendments are. This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton of In Tune. You're listening to KWRH-LP 92.9 FM, your community radio station in Webster Groves, Missouri. Welcome back to In Tune. This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton. Ellie, very interesting information that we got from Nancy Miller.
Yeah, because one of the things that I was thinking about, and we've discussed this before, how initiatives can be written, how ballot, information can be written. And sometimes you may think you're voting yes when you're actually voting no.
Yeah, and that can be very, very confusing. And it is a little bit on this one, but not as confusing as some previous issues have been, where you're exactly right. You vote yes, you're really voting no. You vote no, you're really voting yes.
And so it goes back to, my whole thing about reading. Reading is political. # reading is political. And when you think about how issues are written, didn't Nancy say that they're supposed to be written so that everyone, on all reading levels should be able to comprehend it?
Yeah, she said nationally they write ballot issues on a 6th grade reading level.
Right. But these ballot initiatives, Missouri writes it on a 12th grade reading level. So what are we saying here? We're saying that there is a huge gap there between what the state and what I don't even know what is the state's reading level. Would you say 5th grade, 6th grade on an average?
Oh, I hope not. I hope not. I hope we're a little bit higher than that.
I would like to think we're higher than that. But, when you really take into effect an entire state, you've got very rural communities, very urban communities. You've got people that come out of schools that were not accredited. You've got, professors, college educators. You've got this wide range of people. But for the majority of people, they're reading at a very basic level.
And that's why it's really important to get information. I want to give the League of Women Voters website again. It's www.lwvstl.org, or you can contact them at 314-961-6869. And as you look at the number of people that are running in these races, just, let alone the amendments and the propositions.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot.
All that stuff like that. Like I said earlier, for Republican under Senator, there's 10. For Democrat, there's 8. Then under the representatives, there's a bunch of people. And if you've not done your homework, a lot of times it boils down to this: what sign I see, or how much information I get on a certain candidate in the mail, or gee, I like the colors of those signs. I'm trying to be disrespectful to people, but sometimes people's reasons for voting for individuals are very varied. And if you get a lot of information from somebody, it just says, well, they had a lot of money to be able to send you that information. Doesn't necessarily, maybe you don't agree with their stance or their position. So it's important that you look and find out what the positions are. Many times the League of Women Voters will put out questionnaires. I remember doing this when I was running for school board. They send out questionnaires, you filled it out, you sent it back in, and then they published that information. And if you didn't fill it out, you didn't return any information next to your name.
Exactly.
And so it's important to be able to read what the candidates stand for, what their platforms are, what they want to do. I find it amusing if local or state candidates say they want to solve international problems, because it doesn't matter. They're not involved in international problems.
And they can't do anything.
Right. So those things are kind of irrelevant, but they're like fluff, and they're icing on the cakes for some people. So
does it make you angry when you listen to all of the political ads on television, and all they're doing is they're coming on and really just battering the opponent versus telling us what that person is going to do for us? Does that bother you?
It bothers me, because if you have to tear down somebody else to build yourself up, there's something wrong with you.
But then they haven't told us what they're going to do.
Well, maybe they're not going to do anything.
Okay, well, maybe that is the point. And we're just looking at that ad and thinking, oh, that other person, oh, look at that. They filed bankruptcy. They did this. They cheated on their taxes. All these things that tend to come up. Or poor Claire McCaskill, oh, she's just rich. Okay, they couldn't find anything else on her. So they just had to say that she's rich. And there's a reason, when you look at the majority of the communities again, and you think of, how many people are living below the poverty level, just that one statement alone could be the reason for someone not to vote, realizing that the person that they're voting for is rich as well.
Which, goes back to my comment this several weeks ago about if people had to run for public office, and especially at the national level for D.C., and know that they're not going to get paid, would they run?
Would they run? And again, it goes back to full disclosure. I think that when we look at the situation from the top, and we have our top executive who will not turn over his tax returns, that leads to a lot of other things down the road, because if he won't turn over his, and guess what? If the IRS comes to me and says something, I can say, well, you know what? I'm not turning over mine.
Well, and there's a lot of games.
But I go to jail.
yeah, game playing and showmanship.
That's right.
In all of these races, and it's like, who can outdo whom in the race? Who can make themselves look a little better or sound a little better, or all of those kinds of things. And
instead of who can do a little better.
Well, and it's very, very, great comment. Great comment.
And
who's
again,
get it done?
Because see, a lot of times when people are running for office, they give the impression that they and they alone are the ones that can make that change. They seem like they're working, solitaire, when in fact they're working with a group of people. They have other legislators that they have to contend with. They have local or regional influences, but they all come on and act like, if you vote for me, I'm going to end all the problems that you've ever had in the world.
I've never heard any on the background music of any ad, the William Tell Overture, the Lone Ranger playing.
That's right, exactly.
Because you do have to get along. You have to be able to work with other people, and you have to be able to say, I will not go after this, or if I want to go an inch, maybe I'll take a fourth of an inch on my particular position, rather than, well, it's an inch or it's nothing, or I want 10 inches, but I really want an inch, So it's like, let's get real with how you're dealing with the people here, because you're dealing with governance of the people.
Right, and you are not the dictator.
One of the biggest races that is going on in the county is that of St. Louis Prosecuting Attorney.
Yes, it is.
And I want to let our listeners know that we did interview Prosecuting Attorney Bob McCulloch and his challenger, Wesley Bell, earlier in the school year. And if you want to go back, school year, you can tell I'm a school person.
That's right, you're a school person.
If you want to go back and listen to that, you can do that on iTunes, or you can go do that on SoundCloud. Look up Intune KWRH, but it's show number 10, and you can hear the full interviews. What I want to do right now is play clips of those interviews, and what I've done is put them back to back. I've not cut and pasted words or anything like that. You want full disclosure, you can go back and listen to the entire interview. But what I did is we asked the same questions to both candidates, and I put the answers back to back with these. So we're going to talk, we're going to listen to one of these sections right now. Without further ado, we'll kind of get into that. So why are you running for another term? I know you've been in office since 1991. And if reelected, what do you plan to accomplish that hasn't been done while you've been in office?
Well, if I had accomplished everything I wanted to, then there'd be zero crime out there, and there'd be nobody in prison. So obviously, this is an ongoing process. We've still got a lot to do. Over the years, we've developed a lot of things. Times change. When I first came in as an assistant prosecutor, believe it or not, heroin was a big issue, a big problem. Creating a lot of violence. The form of heroin has changed, but as you well know, I'm sure, heroin and other opioids are as big, if not a bigger problem right now. So we start addressing those things more in the criminal justice system. Perhaps they're better addressed elsewhere, but they're not being adequately addressed. So over the years, I've started a number of programs within the office through drug courts, expanding to DWI courts and other sort of treatment courts to handle that, along with various diversion programs to keep people out of the system altogether, but recognizing at the same time that there are violent, dangerous people out there, and we've put together a terrific staff here of prosecutors over the year. One of the things I'm very proud of is the fact that I've been able to make this office a place where people can make a career out of being a prosecutor. That wasn't possible when I started out, and people would be around a few years and then move on just because you couldn't afford to stay, whether you wanted to or not. I hung around a little over 7 years, probably longer than financially I should have, but was very fortunate to be able to come back later and continue with the prosecution, and then, as I said, as the chief prosecutor, develop a lot of programs, a lot of work with the courts through the legislature. Technology has changed, the court system has changed, so there's still a lot to be done, and most importantly, I still enjoy the work very much.
So when you develop these programs, kind of a little follow-up to that, how do you go about doing that? Is that specific information? Do you give a structure, and then who do you give that to, and who implements that?
Well, just a quick example on one is a drug court. The drug court, actually my good friend Senator McCaskill, when she was Prosecutor McCaskill in Kansas City, in Jackson County, had the first drug court in Missouri, and we talked a lot about it, and she seemed to think, and she was absolutely right, it helps a great deal. There was not adequate, and still isn't adequate, drug treatment, drug addiction facilities in the outside of the criminal justice system, and so here it took a number of years. I met with different judges. We finally were able to secure a grant and get one started. And, what that court does, in a nutshell, it's much more detailed than this, but basically someone is charged with an offense, generally a nonviolent offense, but has a drug addiction problem. They enter a plea of guilty, sentencing is deferred, and they're in a program that's at least 15 months long where they're receiving drug treatment, drug counseling, all sorts of things. They're expected to abide by, and they sign an agreement that they will abide by certain provisions. There are sanctions, graduated sanctions, if they don't comply with those or they fail. There's regular drug testing, but more importantly is the treatment for the addiction. And a lot of people will come into that not really thinking that, okay, fine, this is a way we can just kind of avoid something and do it. But at the end of the program, I said it's a minimum 15 months. It is a great program. There are more lives that we have. I think literally the drug court has saved, certainly changed. If you ever have an opportunity, you should attend the drug court graduation and listen to some of the stories that were there. And these people are they certainly stayed out of jail, stayed off of the standard probation, and have had their drug addiction not cured. It never goes away, but they certainly keep up with that. And a great number of them come back as mentors to new people in the drug court. And so we're always trying to expand that, but it costs money. And so far we've been able to keep going with that. And that I think over the almost 20 years we've had it in place has saved a lot of people and certainly kept a lot of people out of jail, put them back to work.
Why are you running for prosecuting attorney? What has propelled you to seek that particular office?
Well, first and foremost, I want to see a safer St. Louis. I think that when we look at the trends, the statistics, we see the violent crimes, the homicide rates continuing to go up. Also, I think there's a real need for criminal justice reform. When we look at the impact that can be made from the prosecutor's office, that is so huge. There's so much that can be done from that office, and I think that there's programs that we can bring, and ideas that we can bring to do just that.
Well, what kind of an impact? I mean, and you'll find that we're a little bit more specific kind of people here.
Absolutely.
We don't like those big league kind of words, so we like very small, specific words. How specifically do you see this being able to impact the community?
Well, first and foremost, we know the biggest demographic of offenders are reoffenders. And when we are not giving adequate treatment for example, mental health, for drugs, what we're doing is we are increasing the likelihood that these nonviolent offenders, or often first-time offenders, are going to reoffend. And so what we're doing, what the current administration is doing now is just not even close to being adequate. And these are the things that make us less safe.
What kind of things would you do differently than what the current administration's doing?
Well, first and foremost, we have to have a full commitment to mental health programs and our drug court programs. And let me give you some specific examples. In the drug court program in St. Louis County, in order to be accepted into the drug court program, you have to essentially admit guilt. That discourages people who often need these types of services from even getting involved in the first place. Also, the the accused has to pay for this. And we're talking on average somewhere around $2,000. Now let's think about that. We're talking about people with drug problems who need drug treatment, and by not paying, that is grounds for being kicked out of the program, which the previous interview alluded to. And so what that does is now a person who could have gotten drug treatment has not, and statistics are clear. They are more likely to reoffend. And then one more point with the mental health courts. The mental health courts in St. Louis County, keeping in mind that about 1 in 5 Americans are dealing with some type of mental health issues. A mental health court docket in St. Louis County has about 10 people in it. Now, I want you to keep this in mind. There's 1 million people in St. Louis County. There are 10 people, about 8 to 10 people in the mental health courts at this point, at this time. And with the drug treatment programs and the mental health programs, the gatekeeper to get into those programs is a St. Louis County prosecutor. And I'm going to add this too. And we're not talking about a mental health expert. We're not talking about a drug treatment expert filtering who should come in. It's an attorney, and not an attorney with a mental health background. It's just an attorney. And clearly we see by the numbers, there's not a commitment. They're not letting people in. And that's making us less safe because these untreated individuals are going out and reoffending.
So how do you change that? What would you do to get that maybe out of the prosecutor's oversight? Whose oversight would you give it to? Who would you allow in the program? Who would be screening people to get into the program?
Well, first and foremost, those with mental health backgrounds, those who, mental health experts, drug treatment experts. What I advocate for is a advisory council, so that we can set up measurable factors to determine who should and who should be allowed in to drug treatment or mental health treatment. Currently, there are people with diagnosed mental health issues that have not been allowed in the mental health courts. This has to change. We have to make a full commitment to these types of programs, and this is just so important because, again, these individuals who do not get this treatment are much more likely to reoffend. And we are more likely to be victims.
You've been listening to Bob McCulloch and Wesley Bell on a previous interview that we had here on In Tune. This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton. And if you want to go back and listen to the entire interview, that is on iTunes and SoundCloud. Just look up the date, March the 16th, and it is show number 10. And we're going to play another clip in the second hour that deals with some crime. But Ellie, it's interesting to go back and listen to that, and because that was back in March. Here we are now in August, a few days right before the election, and a lot of water under the bridge, a lot of rhetoric under the bridge, a lot of signs in yards, a lot of placards put in mailboxes. But the bottom line is, and the point of the show is, are you getting informed? Are we informing you on our end as a show to make sure that you make good decisions when you walk in and you vote on Tuesday?
You know, one of the things I look at, for instance, is that I see Wesley Bell yard signs here in North Webster. I do not see Bob McCulloch signs. And so when I look at where are signs being placed, and I brought this up with people who were running, I mean, you and I know when you were running, I talked to you about that in terms of how the North Webster neighborhood tends not to have signage from the candidates. However, it has been shown that when people come and canvass in North Webster, they have won.
That's correct.
They have won, and they've won big. We can go back to Sebastian Bud Belomo. We can go back to Matt Armstrong. We can go back to Frank Janoski. You know, I mean, remember Frank was one of the first people knocking on our door.
Right.
You know, we can go back to David Alexander. Is that his name? Yeah, David. Okay, I got his name. But you know who I'm talking about, the young millennial guy that just won, David Franklin. Right. I mean, he was one of the first ones to come knocking on our door during this last campaign. Arnold Stricker came and walked the streets. And guess what? Oh, Pam Bliss. Let's not forget Pam Bliss, Laura Arnold. When those people came through our neighborhood and showed the interest, they got the votes. But just a yard sign, just something that we get in the mail, guess what? You know, if it's not a Steinmart ad that's telling me I got 20% off,
it's going in the recycling bin.
Recycling bin. That's right. Exactly.
It's a bookmark.
So it is important for us to do our homework, to read from various sources what the issues are, so that when we get there, that our vote truly, truly counts. We cannot just we are in a point in this country where no one who is, and I'm using the word ignorant, and I'm not as a big slam, okay, but you can't go and be ignorant of the issues.
No, you cannot. And I think I will use your word, we've been ignorant too long.
Yes, we have been.
And we're paying for it now.
That's right. And we have to be very, very diligent about our, just as much as we would research a neighborhood if we were getting ready to buy a home, how we would research a church if we were getting ready to change churches because we're in a new community. We research school districts. We research everything. And then we get up on the ballot box and just go, let's see, inky, binky, bonky.
Or give me that ballot because that's how my parents voted and that's what I've been told to vote.
Right. Or that was the last name sign that I saw before as I was driving up.
Right. Or the people outside who were electioneering for that candidate handed me something and I had a little brief conversation with them and they were nice people.
Exactly. Those are the kinds of things that we have now got. We've got to take back our right to vote from a standpoint of when we vote. We are so armed, that we look like we're coming in there with a sword.
And we're armed with knowledge in our head because we've done some investigation. If you're not quite sure what your ballot's going to say, you can go to www.vote411.org. And what you do is you plug your address in and you can choose your party, or you can show all the parties, and you can get the information on what your ballot's going to say. But it's important that you can listen to the news channels, you can watch the commercials, you can read the papers, the Times, the Webster Kirkwood Times, you can read the Post-Dispatch, you can read the St. Louis American, you can get all the information, but it's important to get as much information as you can. Listen to the candidates. Maybe have a chance to ask them a question. Because I read different things and I'm like, is that true? When they make a comment and I'm like, how can I find out about that? But I have to dig a little bit to find the answer for myself.
We've gotten very good responses over the years because we have been covering the political candidates ever since, even before we went on the air. And people have told us that they really appreciated the fact that we would do the 30-minute interviews, and then we would post those interviews on our website and let people know that they are available so that they can go back and listen. And they appreciated that because when they would go to the forums, you have a candidate that maybe gets to speak for 2 minutes on an issue, and then that's all you hear from them. But this way they get to hear that person for a half an hour. They can go back and listen again. And after Tuesday, we will be setting up interviews here on the air, as well as then putting those interviews on our website again. So we will have a political drop-down box that people can go to, and those will be posted up until November.
Yeah, it is our goal to get those people in studio or on the phone and ask them the same questions if they're running for the same race, whether it's for Senate or whether it's for U.S. Representative or state rep or state senator in our area or those kinds of races like that. That's our goal, is to reach out to them and ask them if they want to be on the show. We can't force them to be on the show, but we can reach out, and we'll reach out as many times as we can.
That's right. And we do want our listening audience to participate in this by giving us questions that they may have, and they can text us questions here at the studio at 314-736-4510, or they can send us an email at that's a different thing. Okay, email. I get these things mixed up. Email is KWRH-radio@gmail. That's our email address.
KWRH radio at gmail.
That's right. That's our email address. Or people can actually go up on the website and then click through, because we do have a contact us form there. So there's a lot of ways for people to stay involved and to stay informed just here through the radio station.
It's great that you joined us. Stay tuned for our second hour. This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton of In Tune. You're listening to KWRH-LP 92.9 FM, your community radio station in Webster Groves, Missouri.
The views and opinions expressed by the following program are those of the host, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station or Webster Rock Hill Ministries, its management, or other hosts or underwriting sponsors. Programs presented by KWRH-LP are for educational and entertainment purposes only.
Welcome back to In Tune with Arnold Stricker and Ellie Wharton.
Hey, Arnold, I just learned something during the break, and we have to do this because we're a day late. Not a dollar short. No, we're not a dollar short. We're just a day late. Okay. But we've got to extend a happy birthday to Sean, our own Sean Green. His birthday was yesterday, and he didn't even tell us until today. He didn't tell me until today.
He doesn't look a day over 19.
That's right, exactly. I think he's got this, he's getting older kind of thing, so he didn't want to tell us that he's getting older. Although I told everybody when I got older, So now next Friday, we're going to have, our party thing that we always do here. So next Friday, if anybody wants to stop in the studio, we're going to have cake, we're going to have goodies. So we're going to celebrate Sean's belated birthday next Friday.
Well, happy birthday, Sean.
He wants to say something.
I certainly don't behave a day over 19.
That's right. He said that, not us. Anyway, happy belated birthday to Sean Green.
Well, and in honor of Sean's birthday, forget about the past, you can't change it. Forget about the future, you can't predict it. Forget about the present, I didn't get you one.
There you go.
Did you hear about the tree's birthday?
The trees?
It was a sappy one.
Oh, it was sappy. Oh, my gosh.
Did you hear about the love affair between sugar and cream? It was icing on the cake.
Only Arnold can come up with these things, I'm telling
Dear
you.
eyelashes, wishbones, dandelions, pennies, shooting stars, 11/11 and birthday candles. Do your job.
Do your job. There you go.
Okay.
What are you... Sean is in there.
He's trying to figure out how to turn the volume
up.
up.
Yeah, he can't figure out how to turn the...
You can find that and much more at dadsjokes.com.
dadsjokes.com. That was good.
When is a birthday cake like a golf ball? When you slice it.
That was good. I was trying to go through all of the golf things. I was like when you hit a hole in one, when you throw your club in the water.
Yeah, that's me slicing. I slice.
You slice?
Yes, I slice sometimes.
Okay, I just kind of drive past. You know what I really want to do, though? I do want to go to, where was the place, Sean, where was the place that they were talking about today during the morning show? What is it, like Top Golf or something like that that's coming up into town?
In Chesterfield.
In Chesterfield? Yeah. What is that called?
It's called something high that you swing a golf club.
Oh, we can tell you were really paying attention this morning.
Golf. It's like what is the name of that?
They don't know. Anyway, if you
Top
Golf. There you go. So we'll drive out there and
you could stand 6 stories in the air and hit a golf ball for a couple hundred yards.
Is that what you can do?
Yep.
Oh, I'm going to go do that. I've always wanted to do that. The whole being on the 18 holes thing is kind of like after a while, I just want to drive the golf cart.
I can't wait until it's traffic. They open up and traffic comes down into the valley like that, and they see all the lights gone on down there, and it just distracts and backs up traffic way into past 270.
Wait, that's crazy. Past 270?
Oh yeah.
They're expecting that kind of an opening?
No, I'm saying that because when you go down into the valley and that facility is right there.
Oh.
And so people will be looking up rather than looking at their driving. And people will go slower and slower and slower, and it'll eventually back up traffic.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah, and that's supposed to open, I think, next week because I heard the guys on the morning show talking about it. So it sounds like a fun thing to do.
They're still sifting through lakes on golf courses looking for enough golf balls to use.
Okay.
All right, so true to what we said last hour, we had at the end of the show, we had a little snippet from a previous interview that we had done with Bob McCulloch and Wesley Bell, and we're going to play another snippet, and this one talks about crime. And first of all, you'll hear a question that will be asked to Bob McCulloch, and then you'll hear a question that you'll be asked to Wesley Bell. And this is for your information. If you want to hear these entire interviews, you can go to SoundCloud or iTunes and plug in the search engine KWRH in Tune, and you can find show 10 on March the 16th. So this is Bob McCulloch and Wesley Bell from a previous interview. This is going to be a combo question. We acknowledge And we really thank the many law enforcement officers, the police officers, put their lives on the line daily, protecting citizens of our community in St. Louis County. And there's a legal standard for the use of force by a police officer. And so I guess the question is kind of twofold, because it relates to situations that we've seen nationally and in the state and locally that have been hot historically also. What's the legal standard for the use of force by a police officer? And how does that standard and the use of it in those situations cloud and diminish the respect of citizens towards the police and law enforcement? And kind of what needs to change in this area, and what has been learned out of Michael Brown's situation to give the public some confidence in the role of the prosecuting attorney? I know that's several questions there. So
it is a couple, and I'll try to answer them. But I will tell you this: we could spend an entire semester in law school on any one of those topics. So. But let me say this: there really are two issues when there are a lot of issues, but in terms of the use of force, when there's an officer-involved shooting or an officer-involved use of force, there are two issues. One is it an officer making an arrest, or is it an officer who's acting in self-defense? Now, that to a layman doesn't always mean a whole lot, but you have to keep in mind that the obligation of a police officer is to effect an arrest. If they see a crime being committed, if there's probable cause for that arrest, they have a duty and a responsibility to make that arrest. And they have the ability, the authorization, if you will, by the statute, not to retreat. You don't have to be, they can be the initial aggressor in situations when they're going to arrest someone for particularly a forcible felony. And so the statute authorizes them to use the amount of force that is necessary to effect that arrest. As long as it's reasonable and believes a reasonable belief that it's necessary to effect that arrest or to prevent the escape of the individual. There are other requirements that go with that. There's generally a forcible felony involved. The guy presents a danger. If he escapes, he presents a danger. It may be a guy who just robbed a convenience store and is now running away. He's got a gun, and if he's not arrested immediately, he may and does create a danger for everybody else around. So the other issue is the officer, like any other individual, acting in self-defense, and so that's what we have to look at in the first place, because the rules change slightly if you're acting in self-defense. Part of the problem we have is that the legislature keeps changing that. They did away with or added stand your ground, and that's not real clear as to how that applies or what applies. So these are all issues that we have to look at. I think pretty much everyone would agree that any use of force, if you see it, whether it's a barroom brawl or whether it's an officer trying to arrest somebody, is not a pretty sight. And so the question then is the amount of force that was used, whether it's up to and including deadly force, was it reasonable under those particular circumstances? And I think we all have to do a better job of trying to communicate that to the public. I always talk in shorthand. I say, well, this is going to the grand jury, and I know what I'm talking about, but I discovered through Ferguson that most people have no idea what a grand jury is, how it comes about, what their responsibility is, and I think it's an education process, and I think that will go a long way. As a result of Ferguson, there's a lot more training in the de-escalation. The county police, I know, and many of the other municipalities have a crisis intervention team they've had for years, where they try to get in at people specifically trained to de-escalate. But any use of force is not going to be a pretty sight. So I think that, and I think the communication with the community, and that's a two-way street also, just like the guys not paying their child support. It's got to come both ways. You've got to sit down and chat and talk with them. Not every meeting should be confrontational on one side or the other or both sides. So that communication's got to be there. And I think just trying to explain as much as we can about the about the judicial system. I think most people would find out if they came in and sat through a trial and see the safeguards that are involved, what happens here just in determining whether we file charges or not. They'd have a much better understanding and I think a much greater feeling of security in that system. We file charges in probably about 50% of the cases that are brought to us by the police. The police do the investigation, and that's their responsibility. They don't file charges. We review that and determine if charges should be filed, and if so, what charges. We don't do investigations. We don't do arrests. Then the court makes a determination, or perhaps a grand jury of the preliminary determination, but ultimately a court or a jury is going to make a determination as to whether the defendant is guilty. I have no say in that matter. I, as the prosecutor, no prosecutor does. So it's a system with a great deal of checks and balances in it, and I think it's incumbent upon us to get that information out there. There are some people who absolutely need to go to prison, and for a long time, because there are huge dangers, and I'm more than happy to do that. But I told the mother of one little girl who was murdered, as much as I felt satisfied putting her daughter's rapist and killer in prison forever, I would have much preferred to have prevented that in the first place. So,
and I, in prepping for this, I heard an interview where you have actually prosecuted 50 police officers for offenses that they've committed.
Correct. Yeah, roughly 50 over the past 20-something years, and they're offenses committed on duty, sometimes off duty, sometimes not even related to police work, but most of the time they were related to their official capacity. So we're certainly not discouraged from doing that, and not we certainly don't back away from that.
We applaud police officers put their lives on the line daily. First responders, our fire department, but mainly this is going to deal with the police officers. There's a legal standard for force, and how does that standard and the use of it in those situations cloud and diminish the respect of citizens towards the police and law enforcement? What needs to change? And I'm putting a retrospect on what has been learned out of the Michael Brown situation. What have we learned? What needs to be done? I know it's a difficult. A lot of questions there.
That's okay. And I'm going to start at it. I'm going to tackle it. And if there's something I don't miss, please follow up. I'm a big advocate for community policing. And I think anyone who's ever done any kind of research on me knows that, because I don't think that there's any more important relationship than the local community, neighborhoods, and law enforcement. If someone is upset with their streets, once that street is fixed, they're good. They're fine. But once they have a bad interaction or a bad experience with law enforcement, that doesn't go away. And that's why I'm such a big advocate for that community engagement piece. One thing that we do is I work with members of law enforcement, and we conduct groups free of charge on the police simulator, where they get an opportunity, and it's fun and informative. They get an opportunity to engage with law enforcement and see it from the perspective of law enforcement, which I think is so key. Mm-hmm. And it helps them understand why officers may ask to see their hands, for example, why officers may do some of the things that they do. But also for the officers, it gives them an opportunity to start engaging with residents. And, one thing that I've always said is it's hard to hate people, And so when our law enforcement get into the community, like our chief in Ferguson, Chief Moss, like Chief Swope with the North County Policing Cooperative, Captain Clay Farmer, Lieutenant Buchanan, people who get out into the community, they police differently. There's more credibility when I know you. If there is questions, there's people in the community who are going to step up and say, you know what, hold on, I know this guy. This is or lady, and she or he is a good person, and we weren't seeing that in Ferguson prior to me being on the council, but now we've been implementing more of that community policing, and you see people again like Chief Moss, Captain Eichhoff, who are getting in there, talking to people, and developing those relationships, and it makes a huge difference. Now, I think, and I think this was a component of your question. I think the prosecutor it's incumbent on the prosecutor to show leadership, even in law enforcement. One thing that comes with that position is a platform. And one thing that I will do as your county prosecutor is I will use that platform to improve law enforcement, to improve the culture. Because let me be clear. My father's a retired police officer, so I understand that's a tough job. Let me just be clear. That's a tough job. And we want to make sure that our officers have all the tools in the toolbox that they need to do their job effectively. But we know that officers can't do their job without the trust of the community and residents. And we want to make sure that we build that relationship and build bridges as opposed to walls to divide.
You and Bob McCulloch share that common background in that you both have fathers who are in law enforcement. So it's not like you're coming from the standpoint of being a politician or he's coming from the standpoint of being a politician. You're both coming from the standpoint of being children of law enforcement officers. And so you lived it.
Indeed. And I think that gives a unique perspective. I think that one thing that I've also focused on is that community involvement. I want people to see me. I want to be visible. For example, we took 15 juniors and seniors on an all expense paid trip to Washington, D.C. They got to see the new African American Museum.
Absolutely fabulous museum.
College tours. And of those chaperones, which I was one of, and we had several officers. And so not only the trip that several of these kids had never been outside of Missouri, but also just the engagement, the small conversations, the interactions during the trip. Those young people have a different perspective of law enforcement. They've seen them in different ways. We myself and Captain Clay Farmer, we rented out a theater and invited about 80 kids to watch the new Marvel superhero movie. And again, now I have to admit I'm a Marvel fan, so that was fun. But at the same time, I think it's important for us to do that community involvement, let people get to know us and we get to know them. And I think that's another thing that I intend to bring to the county prosecutor's office.
So what should have been learned out of the Michael Brown situation as it relates to reforms or changes to give the public confidence?
Transparency is one. What we saw, and when we talk about the criminal justice system, there's a process. Once someone is arrested, they are charged, and then they're in order to be arrested, there must be probable cause, which is a low standard. Simply means that there was a crime was committed and the defendant could have committed it. Low standard, but then there's a probable cause hearing. There's two different types: a preliminary hearing, which is open to the public, but a grand jury, which many people know is not, and it's secretive, and people aren't allowed in. And I think that there are things that we need to do to remove the veil from the criminal justice system, because justice is about transparency. People need to know. People need to see. If we hear about decisions made in the back room, we question those decisions. But when they're made in the public, at least, even if we disagree, at least we have a better understanding of them. And that breeds trust. So that transparency adds to the trust and the credibility. And so when you are making a pattern, and one thing my mom always said is never trust words, sometimes actions, always patterns. And when we see patterns of secrecy, when we see patterns of lack of transparency, we can't find statistics related to the prosecutor's office as easily as we can other types of things. Well, that breeds distrust. And when a decision is made, that decision won't have as much credibility because people don't trust it. And so one thing that I intend to do is we want to be completely transparent. Honestly, I think we're ethically bound to do so. But also, I think it's the right thing to do.
If you want to hear more of those interviews and the entire interviews, you can go to iTunes or SoundCloud and check out Intune KWRH in the search engine. Look for show number 10, March 16th of 2018. Very interesting words by both gentlemen, Ellie, as far as revealing what they've done in the past, how that's going to impact what they plan to do in the future, and looking at, as Wesley Bell compares to what he wants to do in comparison with what Bob McCulloch has done. We have some differences there. That's one reason we have the show. We want people to be informed about that. We want them to understand who is Wesley Bell, who is Bob McCulloch, what's going on with those candidates and all the candidates for that matter. So we encourage you to make sure that you take time to investigate what's going on, make sure that you see how the candidates are, what issues they're supporting, what are the important things to them, and be ready to go before you go into the voting booth on Tuesday. And
again, you cannot stress that enough, because we just cannot afford to have people going in the ballot box and going inky binky bonky. There's too much at stake here. People need to go and be informed as they step up, and that's their power.
That's part of being a citizen.
That's right. That is absolutely right.
Because in our second half hour here, we're going to have a citizen who has come from another country, and he has quite a story to tell us. He's going to tell us that after the break. But I wanted to give Sean Green some more shout-outs with some of his birthday.
Oh, my gosh.
Sean, just remember that age is a relative thing. All my relatives keep reminding me how old I am. And, Sean, what did the elephant want for his birthday? A trunk full of gifts.
Oh, my gosh. A trunk full of gifts.
Here's why did the birthday cake visit the psychologist? Because it was feeling crumbly.
That's funny, crumbly.
What did the teddy bear say when it was offered some birthday cake? No thanks, I'm stuffed. No,
Is that off the dad's?
He's taking that. I don't know where's that. No, that's Reader's Digest.
Oh, okay.
Birthday jokes.
Okay, that was almost as corny as the dad.com one.
And they are a little corny, and they're all done in good humor and good jest for
That's why I like
Sean.
them, because they are corny. We like corniness.
A corn birthday.
A corn birthday. When I mentioned about the dog days of Kirkwood happening at Meacham Park between 11 and 1, I thought Sean was going to blast out of here in my car.
Because they have hot dogs there.
Yeah, and we just have to let people know Sean doesn't drive. So for him to go blast it out in my car was really...
Maybe there's some afterburners on the bicycle.
There must be, because he told Davo, I guess that's because Davo's got a car. That's why he invited Davo. But there was a method to his madness there. Hey, Davo, let's go over and have some hot dogs, And Davo was like, yeah. So
let's do it. And we've got a guy, he just came in. This is the guy I was talking about for our second half hour. He's sitting here in studio.
And he is cool. Let me tell you.
Good friend, Qui Tran from Mai Lee and Nudo.
Yeah, Qui.
Hello, everyone.
Hey there.
Thanks for having me.
You've got your 3-1 pho shirt on.
That's right.
3-1 pho.
Pho.
Can you figure that out? 3-1 pho?
I'm not even going to go there because...
You should look closely.
Okay.
3-1
pho. 3-1 pho. I got it.
You got it.
I got it. See, I speak Ebonics. Okay. Okay. I got it. 3-1 pho.
There you go.
I understand that one really, really well. Okay. You know what I was thinking about the other day? This is so ethnic. I was thinking how black people say, black women say, I'm going to get my hair done. And white women say, I'm going to the beauty shop. But black people, we understand, I'm going to get my hair done. Which is one of those phrases that you grow up with that is very cultural.
That's true.
And I was thinking about that the other day when I went to go get my hair done.
Was it well done?
It was well done, let me tell you. Sometimes we even, slip into that Ebonics, we going to get our hair did.
Well, my hair did cost about, it takes about 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
So
might not even take that long.
No. There's some days Arnold doesn't even do his hair.
That's right. Just roll right out. It's ready to roll.
Ready to roll.
Arnold and I save a lot of money. It's good for the environment. We save a lot of money on shampoo.
Is that what it is? Well, wait a second. But we know that men use one product for everything. Okay. Which is really, really crazy. I was reading
deodorant?
But I was reading this, it will say how men, they wash whatever they use to wash their hair, they wash everything else with it, And women, we have to have, a special conditioner, a shampoo, a this for our face, we have to have all kinds of stuff.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I use a face wash, Dove, and then whatever shampoo my wife uses. Oh,
okay, well, that does make
3 products.
3 products, okay. I probably use 10.
Okay, well...
So yeah, that was, you heard about how there's this whole big thing about women having to spend so much more on products.
Absolutely.
In order to look more beautiful.
I don't need to buy shampoo.
No, you don't. You don't. That's okay, though.
This is Arnold Stricker with Ellie Wharton of In Tune. You're listening to KWRH-LP 92.9 FM, your community radio station in Webster Groves, Missouri. Stay tuned. Well, we're not superstitious here.
Not at all, man. I mean, we got 314 in the house.
We have Qui Tran from Mai Lee and Nudo here.
Well, thanks for having me.
Hey, Qui, tell us a little bit about your background. I know I've known you for a long, long time and know the story. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about the story?
It's typical American immigrant story, the typical American, so my father was a colonel, South Vietnamese Army, and he fought during the war. And when Saigon fell, obviously we had to get the heck out of there because we probably would not have made it. And so we left Vietnam, and we basically sought asylum. Basically, we went into the refugee camps in Indonesia and Malaysia. And we were there for about 2 years, and we finally, Ronald Reagan said, this was a big mess that we were part of. And he said, let them stay. He said, we have to help these people. And very proud, very glad that he did. And, that's what brought us here to the States.
And the refugee camps, as your dad would say, because you were born in Vietnam, your sisters were born here in the States, but it was pretty much every person for themselves.
Yes, it was pretty bad, and the stories they have. I'm hoping one day that I can tell their story. So I'm looking into that right now, having someone tell their story, because it needs to be told, especially in obviously it always needs to be told, especially right now. It's it's what makes America great, right? It's the immigrants and everyone that came because they wanted to seek a better future. The Italians did it, the Jewish, the Irish, just on and on.
Yeah. And what's interesting, Qui, is that I lived in California, in Northern California, at the end of the war. Actually, I was in media there. And so we began to see this great influx of Vietnamese, Cambodians, Laotians from that era, that area. But then we also started to see the influx of the Filipinos who were coming from the Philippines. They were getting the heck out of there with the Marcos regime.
Right, of course.
And then we were having the Hispanics coming up from the South because they were part of the Chavez group that was coming in to, to basically pick the food and do that. So we had this huge influx of, and it just seemed like all at one time. As soon as the war ended, there was this huge influx of people that we had to learn a new culture.
And that happened. I mean, you look throughout history. I mean, in the 1920s, right? It was the Italians, during World War II again, more, trying to get away from Mussolini. And
that's right. That's
so
right.
It's you're talking about America has always been. That's why. People ask me, what are you? I'm an American. What do you? What do you?
That's right.
That's what I am.
Because I met another young lady. She's probably around your age. This is when I lived in Panama, and she was a child, probably around 7 or so, when her parents came over. But they settled in Canada. And so she grew up as a child in Canada. But when I was talking to her, she said that, I said, well, what do you see yourself as? How do you identify? And she says, I'm Canadian.
Well, yeah, and it's like during that, the Vietnam War era, like if you're in France, I mean, that's why there's a huge influx.
That's
of
right.
Vietnamese in France because of the French occupation, many, many years ago. And like even in Montreal, huge population. Arnold, you and I were just talking about Montreal, but huge population of Vietnamese because it's it was they speak French up there. A lot of Vietnamese during that time spoke French, and so that happened.
That's right. And for people that don't remember the war, it was the French who were in Vietnam, for 10 years prior to the Americans going over there?
No, they've been there for a long
time. Well, okay.
So that's why, if you talk about like pho in general, like the basically, you could call it the national dish of Vietnam, but it's a beef stock noodle soup. And, you know, northern pho is completely different than southern pho because of the French. You know, being the French when they colonized South Vietnam, and that was part of the war too, because when the French came in, you know, they colonized South Vietnam. You talked about the South had huge trade influxes of all these different spices. So the pho in southern Vietnam, the southern style pho is very rich. So it's a lot. It's you know, it's a lot more rich in spices. It's a lot richer broth. So you know, just through food, you just had a whole history lesson of how that came about. So.
Very, very cool. So you guys came over, and you know, I kind of consider LA. I kind of consider Qui the unofficial food ambassador of St. Louis.
Okay.
Way too kind.
Because
That's good.
no, it's he. And matter of fact, he probably needs to be made the official ambassador of food ambassador of St. Louis.
Can we do that?
I think we can.
I think we should.
So we will knight him the official
Yes.
food ambassador of St. Louis.
Okay, here you go. Let me roll up my paper.
Let me get down on let me bend the
Okay, here we
knee.
go. Bang.
Okay, there we go.
All right. So because
You've been anointed.
what's interesting about Mai Lee restaurant is a lot of chefs, many chefs from the area of the restaurants that we all know and have eaten at and really enjoy their food, they would congregate there. And Qui would get to know them all, and they do a lot of different things together. And what's interesting about the chefs in St. Louis is, for the most part, they get along very, very well. Mm-hmm. And in many other cities, it's not like that. They're at loggerheads with each other. So talk about how your mom got the initial store going, and then when the move to Brentwood, the city of warmth.
Yes, I'm a big fan of Brentwood. I used to live there. So, no, we actually, my mother started in 1985. So she opened Mai Lee in 1985. And actually, when we opened, it wasn't a Vietnamese restaurant. So she was studying, at the time in the 80s, Chinese food was big. People were making a good living from selling Chinese food. So she worked in numerous Chinese restaurants, figuring out systems, you know, all that good stuff. So she basically started Mai Lee as a Chinese restaurant. And obviously, it's a very difficult business. And she didn't hit it out the park, even though the food was good. But how do you make your mark when there's a million other places that people are used to going to? And so a little bit, like a few months later, she ended up starting Vietnamese food. And she was like, well, we're Vietnamese. Why don't we sell Vietnamese food? And it's never been done in St. Louis before. You know, there may have been hints of, you know, some Vietnamese food here and there, but no one's ever opened a Vietnamese restaurant. So we basically reinvented ourselves, and, you know, we became a Vietnamese restaurant. And we did keep some of the Chinese food there, but we started out with some of the basics, pho being one of the soups as well, like a 10-item menu. And we were very fortunate. You know, at this time, there was still no business. You know, my mom's old business partner left us with all the debt, stole all the money, and left town. Was nowhere to be seen. And at this point, you know, how do you survive? So it was very nerve-wracking, I'm sure. Luckily, I was too young to go through those kind of pains with them. I was just, you know, a young guy. And we got very fortunate because after we announced that, I mean, literally like within a year, you had the late, great Joe Pollack, who was the main St. Louis food, you know, critic, food writer in St. Louis. And he came in probably, I would say, 87, I think. I pretty much was. So in 87, he basically said, wow, I've never had Vietnamese food before in my life. This place is great. Everyone needs to have this food. And so from then, we basically went from twirling our thumbs, trying to figure out how to get business, to, holy cow, it's really busy. So, you know, a 6-table restaurant with a line out the door. And we were very thankful and, you know, very fortunate for that.
You moved from Del Mar location, Del Mar and 170, to Brentwood on Music Memorial Drive. And the reason for that is because of MoDOT, right?
Well, yes, part of it, yes. So actually we, you know, I really got back into the restaurant business. You know, I always worked and I always knew the business, but I didn't really take ownership in the business till, I would say, 2000, 2001. And I kind of came back and I kind of step by step just kind of seeing what Mom was doing. And then as I was doing that, I was like, man, this place could be better than this. Like, I was a little bit more ambitious and was like, we should be better than this. We can be better than this. And, me learning wines and learning all kinds of stuff. And so after 25 years on Del Mar, I decided to move the whole operation in 2010. And so speaking of MoDOT, basically at the time the Highway 64 was closed. And so we were looking for a space to move Mai Lee's. And as you know, Arnold, Olive was one of the spots, Olive and 170. However, as I was talking to MoDOT, they were saying that I couldn't vision it at the time, but they were saying that in the location that we are right now, anybody going southbound on Hanley has to cross my way to get to Eager Road. And at that point, I was like, well, that's going to be thousands of cars a day. And so that became the spot for Mai Lee's in 2010. So I moved everything. So I basically packed our livelihood up on a gamble that it will work. And that was a little bit scary because, your parents are a little bit older. They're like, yeah, we don't want chains. We don't want this. And I'm like, no, we could do better. We should be better. I think we can really make our mark here and, do something great. And so they had a little faith in me, and I'm glad it worked. And I thank St. Louis for that every day.
And parking is great there because there's a parking garage. For the restaurant.
That is always a plus.
Yeah, so you could actually park, if you had 10 cars, you could park 10 cars, one car in each level, and still have plenty of parking left at Mai Lee's.
That's good. That's excellent.
And you moved out from kind of developing your own style and your own brand and getting the other store going and getting the ramen store going, Nudo. And that was a kind of a labor of love and, again, a birthing, as we've talked about with Ellie, about birthing the station here, about birthing that restaurant and getting Nudo off the ground. And Marianne, who's the chef out there, that took a little bit of time to kind of plan all that out.
Yeah, it was probably a 3-year journey. I think we started out as an idea. It actually started out as my wife, because a long, long time ago, she goes, you got to have ramen. I was like, well, heck, we eat it all the time at home. She goes, no, Japanese ramen. Real Japanese ramen.
And you know that for us, ramen was like the dollar bag.
For everyone.
For everyone, right. Especially if you were a college student.
Dollar bag, 10 cents.
Well, that is true. That is right. Yeah, it used to be, man, I lived on ramen when I was in college, because you could just throw it in some water and throw some vegetables in there and you had a meal.
Well, you had water and sodium. I mean, it goes great. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's right. Water and lots of sodium.
Right. So funny thing is, I still love packaged ramen. I'm just like, you watch David Chang. He doesn't even cook it. He eats it like potato chips. He puts the seasoning in it, break it up, and walks around, does his show on TV. It's brilliant. I'm like, we all did that as kids. I still do it. So
that is fun.
And Nudo is expanding.
And Nudo is expanding into the East Loop. So we basically just signed the lease, and it's been. I'm so glad we have the support of the community, and it's been big news. And like I said, it's been great. I didn't envision it this way. When we opened Nudo, it was just something that when I had for the first time, I really enjoyed it. And, my first inclination was, how come no one does this in St. Louis? And my wife goes, well, you're the soup master. Why don't you do it? And I was like, okay, that's not a bad idea.
That makes sense.
I was like, okay.
And it was kind of like the transition, because when I was growing up here in St. Louis, and, you did have some Chinese restaurants, but they were, pretty much the generic,
sure,
yeah, and they weren't really Chinese. It wasn't really Chinese food.
It was Chinese American.
Yeah,
food.
It was definitely Chinese American food. And but I think this is a good town because it's an Italian town, so we were used to pasta and things like that. So kind of like the noodle thing, it just flows.
Perfect.
It is. It's perfect.
It's perfect. It's Italians. It's pasta and risotto, and Asians it's noodles and rice.
That's right. Exactly.
Same thing.
Now, Ellie, I'll tell you how humble this guy is, and he is extremely humble, and he gives kudos to a lot of other people. Never pats himself on the back, but here you have a gentleman who's worked his way to be on the cover of Food and Wine magazine, okay, with recipes inside with his mom, been on PBS, been in Time magazine, had a slot on the Travel Channel, cooked and did some workshops at Live at Yountville. So if you're familiar with that goes on out in California, that's you're doing basically you're helping people learn how to cook. It's pho, right?
I had a pho class and I was cooking for in front of like ex-NFL players and like country music stars. It was quite an experience. I got to hang out with Rita Wilson. How about that?
Yeah. You cooked at Single Thread for their staff. Single Thread, unbelievable restaurant. So you have really made a place for St. Louis and Vietnamese and ramen nationally. And people are now beginning to recognize St. Louis as a food destination, I really think because of your efforts, Qui.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm very honored and very appreciative that I got all that just boiling water. I just turn on the stove and
boiling water, throw some sodium in there.
Right, yeah, it works out
and
great.
An occasional ramen noodle.
Yeah, an occasional noodle and maybe some broccoli. I don't know, or a carrot.
Well, we grew up from humble beginnings. We came here with nothing, couldn't speak the language, had many, many struggles, and got helped along the way by a lot of different people. And my philosophy is, if I can help anybody, I'll be more than happy to lend you the shirt off my back. So we don't. The city of St. Louis is a very community-driven city, and so for us, if we don't grow together, we'll never grow at all. And so that's always been my philosophy. I'm a lover of food. And so I have a huge interest in different cuisines, what people are doing. I'm constantly learning. And I think that's just how you have to be in life. There's a lot of people that's always teaching me something, and it's great that it's very humbling when, like I said, getting a chance to cook staff meal for Single Thread, which was the most highly anticipated restaurant opening of last year.
In the United States.
And not only that, but they got 2 Michelin stars on their first go-round. I think that's pretty much unheard of. And the list that does the 50 best restaurants in the world this year already put them up as, watch out, they may crack the top 10.
Wow.
Already. And so to be in the presence of a great chef like Kyle, and for him to be standing over my back and asking me questions, that just, it's very humbling. Let's put it that way, because he's learning from me, which I'm like, dude, this is the simplest thing on earth.
And you've always been hospitable.
Sure.
And then you were verified by Danny Meyer. And Danny Meyer, a St. Louis native who kind of has made it big in New York in the restaurant business. And, he owns Shake Shack. They were down in the Central West End, but he's numerous restaurants in New York City. But I think he verified something you knew and you were already doing at the restaurants was being hospitable to people and making sure they had an enjoyable experience.
And, to be recognized by the king of hospitality in
That's
that
huge.
manner is, it's huge. And, like I said, St. Louis is a great city, not because of what I do, but because of what we do collectively in the food community. Food's like music, right? Food's like art. I mean, it brings everyone together. It's, like I said, I always give this analogy where, if you like rock, there's punk rock, grunge rock, pop rock, hair bands. Not one is better than the other. There's people like what they like, and the food's the same way. Like, as long as people are educated about food, that's better for me. So the more people go out to eat at Independence and reach out and, they want to try like Gerard's restaurants or Kevin Nashen's restaurants, or, they go eat barbecue at, all the different Pappy's places. So, wherever they eat, wherever they go, the more that they go and educate themselves on food, the better it is for me in the business, and the better it is for everybody. Because
speaking of those other chefs, you've got an activity coming up with them at the end of August for Lift for Life Academy. Can you tell us a little about that?
So the Lift for Life Academy is on Broadway in the city, and it helps inner city youth get off the streets, and they provide clothing, and they provide a lot of things. It's the Ritz-Carlton's main charity, and what we've done is it's August the 30th at the Ritz-Carlton. It's $100 a ticket, but I mean, you have the best of the best. If you're not doing nothing Thursday night, you need to be there, because you have Gerard's there, right? Gerard Kraft and his restaurants. Kevin Nashin and his restaurants will be there. David Choi from Soul Taco will be there. Our friend Lauren Balkan Treat Box will be there. Farmhouse will be there. I will be there, so and not only that, but we've brought our friend in from Montreal. Chef Antonio Park is coming in to cook for this event. So if you haven't had his food, you need to be here because it's cheaper than flying to Montreal because the guy, so
you don't even need a passport to come here.
That's but he, and that's the reach of food. And Chef Antonio Park is amazing because he is actually Korean born in Montreal, lived in Argentina for like 15 years of his life, then came back to Montreal, went to Japan, came back to Montreal, and then now he's literally only 43 years old, owns like 6 restaurants in Montreal, and recently just opened up a restaurant with Drake in Toronto.
Oh, wow.
So it's it's insane, but the guy is one of the nicest guys in the world, very humbling. Like he's like me. I'm like, I'm a overfed dishwasher, but he actually has dishwasher on his business card. So it's crazy, but the guy is super talented. And, being a world traveler and like his food reflects it. And, and it's crazy because I'm like, I feel like such a slouch because, not only does he speak Korean and Korean, so he speaks Korean, English, Japanese, French, and Spanish. So, boy, I'm really slacking. So I've got a couple years to catch up. Maybe I'll learn some new languages here.
And the lady I was telling you about who went to I think she went to Toronto, is where they were raised. But she ended up marrying a man who is Jamaican, but he's he's Asian. He's an Asian Jamaican.
Oh, wow.
Chinese Jamaican.
Wow.
And then he owns a restaurant in Toronto. I remember him saying that because he would fly back and forth, to go do things with his restaurant in Toronto. And so then they eventually moved back to Jamaica. But I know he still flies back and forth to take care of his restaurant.
Now I want Jamaican Chinese food.
Yeah, Jamaican Chinese food, yeah.
I'm so down with that.
So that activity is at the Ritz-Carlton?
It's at the Ritz-Carlton. You guys can go on Eventbrite and purchase tickets, but it's a great charity. It's a great event because now for $100, you can stay as long as you want. There will be, music. There's going to be great food. You can eat. I mean, you can have 12 different restaurants, eat at 12 different restaurants in one place, and it's all going to charity. Everybody needs to go. You need to drop what you're doing and go. It's going to be amazing.
And folks, we want you to make sure that you drop everything. And go to Mai Lee or go to Nudo. Great experiences, great food. We love it there. It's we feel like we're family there.
You are.
And you go and you have a great time. You have a great meal, and it's a great atmosphere. And the staff does a wonderful job, too. So we really appreciate you coming in today, Qui, and talking to us.
Well, I appreciate it. And, like I said, I'm always open, and, I appreciate you and appreciate all of St. Louis and everyone showing support. Eat local.
As the official food ambassador, as designated by Allie Wharton and Arnold Stricker,
right.
We acknowledge you and give you kudos to your reaching out across the United States and across the world to bring St. Louis food into a destination.
Well, thank you.
And Arnold, it goes right back to what we were talking about last week. Remember when we were talking about all of the things that there are to do here in St. Louis and how sometimes we get caught up in ennui and, there's just nothing to do, nowhere to go.
Or all the negative things about St.
Exactly.
Louis.
And just last week, I was attending the St. Louis Regional Chamber of Commerce dinner. And I'm going to tell you, when they started talking about all the things that there are to do in St. Louis and how amazing. Proud it is amazing. When you really hear
free.
Somebody, that's the thing, it's free. So much is free or very low cost. And we have all of these different, districts and things. St. Louis has it going on. We just have to become a little more.
We need to be proud of our city.
We do. We have to be in tune with our city. That's what we have to do.
And you're going to get more in tune with your city when you listen to In Tune.
I tell you, was that a shameless plug or what?
Let's plug away.
Let's plug away. Plug-ola.
Since we're plugging, let's plug the city and county together and let's be one.
Well,
let's do it.
Don't forget, when the Martians invade, there's only one race, the human race, and every one of us have different characteristics and is uniquely valuable. This is KWRH-LP 92.9 FM. For In Tune, studio manager Chris Verdesi, co-host Ellie Wharton, I'm Arnold Stricker. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, walk worthy and let your light shine.